to the Naked Tarot Podcast with your host, Janet Boyer. Get ready to strip down with the most provocative voice in tarot.
Hello and welcome to the Naked Tarot Podcast. I'm your host, Janet Boyer, otherwise known as the Tarot Maven. I'm the author of Back in Time Tarot, Tarot in Reverse, and the upcoming Naked Tarot, Sassy Strip Down Advice. With my artist husband, Ron Boyer, I'm also the co-creator of the Snowland deck and the Coffee Tarot. I invite you to visit my website, janetboyer.com, where I have hundreds of reviews. You can buy our decks, you can see all the books and ebooks I've written, read some articles, and other goodies. I haven't been posting many podcasts lately because I have been at work on the Coffee Tarot companion book. I only have a few cards left. I'm really excited. I'm inching towards 50,000 words, which is about 6,000 words past my second book, Tarot in Reverse. And it's inching up more and more. And I have about 15 cards left. So it's going to be a beautiful, full-color, chunky companion book. So I've been hard at work on that, which is why I haven't posted many podcasts lately. Once that's done, I will definitely up my podcast. If you want to know more about my Coffee Tarot, well, my husband and I created it, but I'm writing the companion book, please go to coffeetarotdeck.com, or you can find it through janetboyer.com. Just look for the Coffee Tarot tab on the navigation menu. Dax Carlisle and I are continuing our tour through the Minor Arcana numbers, and we are on the threes over at Tarot Insider Radio on Psychic Talk Network. So I thought I'd post our show about the threes. It's a great mini class where we both share our input onto the cards from different perspectives. Dax is more numerological, I'm more psychological, and it's a really interesting mix to see how different people can interpret the cards, both through the lens of the Rider-Waite and through other non-traditional decks like our Snowland deck and the Coffee Tarot. So without further ado, here is the podcast on the Minor Arcana Threes. Remember, 3 is a magic number. Enjoy.
These mini classes live on air going through the Minor Arcana, we're talking about the essence of the cards, how it can be applied to any deck, and it's really great when Janet chimes in with various aspects of images from other decks, and also like your two decks, the Coffee Tarot and the Snowland deck, and how the same card with the same essence, but there can be different symbols, and so there's slight or sometimes more than slight differences that it just adds to the adds to the depth of the vocabulary that is tarot, is the way I look at it.
Right, I totally agree, and I think anybody can expand their CASP associations if they just remember that you can look at any tarot card from any lens. And I think what restricts some people or limits their vision or their view of a card is because they only pick the typical lenses, which understandably when somebody's getting a reading, it's usually within these few lenses, which is like career, money, relationships, vocation, health. Those are usually the main reasons people get a tarot reading. But you can look at it through so many other different lenses, and that's one of the reasons I, wrote Back in Time Tarot, so people would start with their own memories or maybe a movie that they love or a book or a fairy tale or a song or a TV show plot or what have you. And then you start making associations based on real-life situations. And then when you do that, you really start expanding your CASP associations. You go way beyond the recipe, cookbook meanings that most tarot books relying on Rider-Waite myth imagery, stop at. And you go way beyond that. And so if you start asking yourself, okay, if this card was seen in this situation, like what if this card was at a restaurant? And it might seem silly, but then it starts, you start thinking, okay,
what kind of preferences would this card have? What kind of food might it like? What environment would that card most be comfortable in? And by doing that, you kind of get a real feel for the energy, and that not only expands your intuition, but it also makes you more aware of the vast amount of, personal interactions and daily situations that we can have that tarot can speak to that we may not have thought of.
Exactly. And here we are on the third one of these in this series, and we're going to be talking about the 3 cards. And Janet came up with this idea, and when she expressed it to me and said, let's go through the minor arcana, let's do it numerologically, let's go, all the 1 cards, all the 2, all the 3. I'm like, oh my God, you're right up my alley. I mean, my whole course is built on that, tarot by the numbers. And
for years I thought the minor arcana always gets the short shrift. I mean, the court cards as well. But so many people dedicate so much time and information to the majors. Even in deck companion books that are mass market produced, you look at the major arcana and they'll dedicate 3 to 4 pages to that. You hit the minors and you get a couple sentences, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the minors are where we live, and not many people have done a lot with the minors, which is one of the reasons I hope to remedy that with my upcoming Naked Tarot. But I think the classes like this help people too to realize, oh my gosh, the minor arcana is not just small stuff. This is where we live every day. This is how those archetypes manifest, and I think we definitely need to, shine more light on the minor arcana. So I'm really happy about these mini-class series we're doing.
That's right. Yeah, and I wanted to start off before we get into the 3 cards and the minors, just, set the stage a little bit. If you've been following along, and here we are in the 3s, you might already be surmising, you might already be noticing a progression going on here. And I'm not talking about the the numerical progression of 1 thing, 2 things, 3 things, 7, 8 things, but rather that we're actually in the early stages of the manifestation cycle. And as we go through this whole thing, I think it's going to really, bring it to light. And each one of the separate suits, based on the element, is giving you kind of like a sliver or a part of that. And it's just fascinating stuff to me. It's always been fascinating. We started off with the 1, obviously, and then there was the 2, and then there was the 3rd thing. And I like to relate it to, the most obvious analogy is, 1, you've got man, and we talked about the phallic look of the number 1, and then 2, man meets woman, and the duality comes into play, and we talked about that last time, and we talked about the shape of the 2 and the feminine curve of the 2, or curves depending on how you draw it out. And so the obvious analogy is man meets there's man, and then in 2, man meets woman. In 3, they get pregnant, and in 4, structure. They manifest. They have a child. But that's the obvious one. But it can relate to any progress. So, collaborating on a project, writing a book, a play, a movie, collaborating on music and invention. Any manifestation. Even if you're a singular artist, no man or woman is an island, as they say. Everything requires some form of collaboration. The painter has to acquire her paints and brushes and canvas from someone, right? Artists have muses and so on. And so, there's always some kind of collaboration, And next time, in 2 weeks, we're going to do the 4s, and we'll be talking about structure and the 4s. But that's not the end of it. It almost sounds like it is, because you have 1 and then 2 and then the manifestation 3 and then the final product 4, structure. We're done, right? No, there's 5 other numbers, And the problem with structure, Janet, is, structure's a great thing, but you can get stuck at 4 and never get to the 7 and the 8 and the 9. 5 is actually that chaos that breaks us out of the structure so that we can return to harmony in 6. 7 is spiritual. It's getting to its realization. It's the number of the detective. 8 is abundance. You may have structure at 4, but you don't get true abundance till you have double 4. And then 9, the completion. So we're going to be going through this whole cycle, and I just wanted to lay that out before we get into the 3s here. I love the 3s, though. 3s it's creativity, communication, integration, reproduction, progress, growth, expansion. I think it's all embodied in the 3rd card of the Major Arcana, the Empress. And if you're looking at the image on Facebook, on our group, you're going to see it there. By the way, if you can't figure out how to get to our group, just search Psychic Talk or Psychic Talk Radio. There's a page in a group. You want to go to the group. You can also just open a new tab in your browser, type in psychictalk.net/Facebook. It'll take you right over there. You can join the group, join in the conversations. You'll also find this image on our Tarot Guild group, which has, well over 5,200 members. 5,000 people there, folks. Go check it out, and you can follow along and look at the images as we go through things. We're talking about the essence of a card, but I'll point out symbolism from the Radiant deck, from the Waite Smith version, and it's just because that's what I'm most familiar with. Obviously, other decks have other symbols, and Janet's gonna give us some insight into that. But so the 3 card, where do you want to start with the 3 cards?
We can start with the wands. I just wanted to briefly say that
Sure.
When I see the 3s, I think of the theme needing another for fulfillment, needing another person for fulfillment. Not just things, but another person. It's a coming together. Like you were saying, an artist needs collaborators, not all the time, but that would be the same type of energy, especially with wands. Waiting for your ship to come in, things like that. For our coffee tarot, we showed a pirate on a ship, and he was showing his fellow pirates how to make coffee out of a Chemex, which is totally anachronistic. But
I love it.
Yeah, it was kind of while his Jolly Roger was on fire, and there's an island in the background, and we also took that to mean like instruction or demonstration. Because when you're demonstrating something, there's the person, they're taking the knowledge, and then they're showing it to the person, and then if they incorporate that, then it will equal knowledge. And it could also mean like you're expanding your influence, doing your own thing, absorption in a vocation or a hobby, or also even expecting a return on investment. A lot of times that's what that waiting for your ship to come in means. In the 2, we sent it out. We sent the intention out, or we sent the goods out, or we sent some work out. And so then in the 3, we're expecting a return on our investment. We're expecting to hear a yes, that we got the grant, we got the scholarship. We're now making some profit, on our investment. I also see this card as like prioritizing the journey over the destination. So many times, if we were to use the numbers as a metaphor, people, think, oh, I can't wait to get to the 8, to the 9, to the 10. Whether it's abundance or acclaim, accomplishment, things like that. But the 3 of Wands, it's like a mini success, but it's more prioritizing the journey over the destination. But on a practical standpoint, it could mean overseas shipments, customs, anything dealing with that, or waiting for something to come in, from overseas on a ship. Now, Snowland, we actually have a figure that looks like Sting, the lead singer of the Police, and he's on this island, and all these messages in the bottle are washing up as a nod to that awesome song by the Police. And so it's waiting for your ship to come in. There's little mini ships, but we also made that to look like what would Sting be doing with this, like a North Pole, amplifier, and you could see like the waves amplifying his song as he's playing a guitar. And so a lot of times I see the Three of Wands is publicity or feedback, or expanding your influence, and so therefore social media efforts, or promotion, promoting yourself, because one of the ways that you get a return on investment, especially in this digital age, is you have to promote yourself. You have to put yourself out there, whether it's through business cards or flyers or posters or Instagram posts or things like that. And it also can mean trade and commerce. Some would say the Six of Coins for that. I see trade and commerce more to be the Three of Coins. Also, the Three of Wands has an indie type feel to it. Like you're operating under your own power, or you're crowdsourcing. I also see crowdfunding campaigns like Kickstarter or Indiegogo is coming under the Three of Wands, because it's a person who has an idea and they want to bring something to fruition, but needing another for fulfillment, meaning backers and money. They make an appeal to the crowd to say, hey, do you believe in this? And if so, will you put your money where your mouth is, so I can make this happen for me and for us? And so I see Three of Wands too as being like the indie card of the tarot, as opposed to like mass market or going a traditional route or going through an institution. Three of Wands is more like a do your own thing, and or networking with people, or using YouTube to get your message out. And also feedback, because there's a type of a feedback loop there, too. 1, 2, 3, you set it out, the message or signal gets sent out, and then you get a message back to tweak whatever you have, or to, give a second look to it. What about you? How do you see, Also, I see the Three of Wands, too, as amalgamation of resources, and in the health query, of course, we're not qualified to do health readings, and I always recommend people go to their health practitioner. But there are times when I've seen the Three of Wands come up where it means that you're waiting test results, which would make sense, because if, in a business type of sense, if you're waiting for a return on investment or waiting for your ship to come in, if it were into, in the health, it could mean, awaiting, test results. Or perhaps, waiting to see what that message will be once things have been evaluated.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's amazing that you said that, because in my notes on the Three of Wands, I talk about freelancing. And,
excellent.
And online stuff. I also see it as, for me, it's always been the card of writers and writing jobs. He's waiting for his ship. He's waiting for his ship to come in, but he doesn't stop there. He's planning ahead for what's to come and for expansion. This is the early stage Three. This is not the end. It's his ship's coming in, but he's also looking at the big picture. And in the Waite Smith version, the wand staff in his right hand, that, to me, that's the planning ahead, and the two staffs behind him are the research he's already done. And the other thing is that, and I don't really understand how this actually happened, but for some reason, and this is way back, I just envisioned that staff in his hand. It shrunk down and became a pencil. He is, writing this all out, and it leads into the freelancing, but also the aspect of the writer, writing jobs, things like that. I see the Three of Wands and anything communication, and I see the Three of Wands because 3 is the number of communication in numerology as well, and so maybe it's from that point of view that I have embedded that in my subconscious understanding of what's going on with anything that's a 3 card in tarot, and it's just It's my language. It's my version, let's say, or something like that. Yours could be completely different. Is the point I'm trying to get across.
I love the idea of one of those being shrunk down as a pencil. I have never thought of that, and that's brilliant. I'm totally gonna like add that to my toolbox, because normally, for me, the card that comes up for writing a lot of times is Queen of Swords, but that's usually because I write nonfiction.
Okay.
It's more of a critical eye when I write. It's more intellectual. But come to think of it, the Three of Wands would be perfect for like, especially if you're going to do collaboration work, or like you were saying freelance. I could see this card coming up for like the independent writer, the one that chooses to self-publish, because they want to do their own thing. They're like a free agent. They want to do it under their own power, and that's
it also
that's a really
comes
cool
from
angle.
the element. Yeah. And and wood. I mean, obviously pencils, wood, but the whole thing of it being the fire element, the fire suit, and that passion and following your writers follow their passion, and when the Three of Wands pops up for me, I mean, that's one of the first things, I look at the reading I'm doing, and I it pops in my head, and I see if it applies. Careers in writing, project management, freelancing, something along those lines. Mm-hmm.
Psychic Radio Network would be like the Three of Wands.
Oh, there you go.
Because we've all come together and we're communicating, and the Wands is the fire and the passion, and we're ultimately our bottom line here as a network is to empower people, and that's a Wands fire energy, to give people tools to understand themselves better, to cultivate their passions, and to go after what they want in life. So I can totally see the network as like Three of Wands, because it is that we need each other for fulfillment for the whole thing, and it's a coming together, and when you add, our knowledge together, then it expands and creates something new.
And last time when we started talking about, combining with other cards, I used that theme, for instance, the Three of Wands and the Eight of Wands, communicating on social media. I can also use the Fool card for that. The Three of Wands and the Magician, online business, a talented writer, a copywriter. Three of Wands and the Temperance card, or the Page of Wands, Knight of Wands. I get journalism, foreign correspondent, overseas study, things along those lines. Let's see, what's some other ones? Three of Wands and the Ace of Swords, a quick wit, or legal documents. And the Three of Wands and the Two of Cups, relationship therapist. Anyone? Three of Wands and the Knight of Cups, a poet or a writer, especially in the romance area. And of course you could use other Cups cards too. Maybe the Ace of Cups shows up with the Three of Wands, anything along those lines. And then another example, the Three of Wands and the Nine of Wands, intellectual property.
Interesting. Why property for the nine? Why property for Nine of Wands?
Okay, so and by the way, I want to let everybody know that some of these are my examples, some of them are not my examples, because I go out when I was writing this course. This is all from my course, and when I was writing the course, I went out and did a lot of research. What do people think about combinations with certain cards? So some of them I came up on my own, some of them I found on the net, and you could do the same thing, just research around, look for card combinations, and, it doesn't have to be written in stone, but what it does is it starts you thinking about, when this card is next to this card, and you'll come up with your own interpretations, develop your own language, and install that into your subconscious mind, like I have. So when the Three of Wands pops up, I'm thinking communication, writers, and something else. And then the something else is that other card, and then that's where the combination comes in. So with the Nine of Wands, okay, the Three of Wands, you're writing, you're creating the intellectual property, and the reason why it's intellectual property to me is the Nine of Wands is you have all in the Waite Smith version. He's holding his wand, he's got his battle wounds there. He's got the bandage on, and behind him are the 8 other wands, all nicely in a row there, and it if you think of it as, whether it's writing or anything else that you've produced, these are the things that you produced, and you're standing in front of it with this wand, and you're guarding what you've produced. And that combined with the Three of Wands is how I get intellectual property.
Oh, now see, I would see that as the Seven of Wands, because the person is defending. And a lot of times with intellectual property, the very idea of intellectual property means that you're going to defend it. So, see, when the Nine of Wands comes up, I think about how he's had the shit beat out of him. So I tend to see
I understand
that as
that.
so that's why I thought I'd ask. I'm like,
You can use
now,
both. One person might use the Seven of Wands, and someone else might think the Nine of Wands, depending on what's your tarot language. Yeah. So I could totally see that. When we get to the Three of Swords, for instance, I use the Seven of Wands, because Three of Swords and Seven of Wands to me is unable to protect your boundaries properly.
I see.
Yeah. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Anything else we want to say about the Three of Wands before we look at another card?
No. I did think that sometimes I see this as creativity for creativity's sake as well. We talk a lot about, waiting for a ship to come in and, return on investment and things like that. But not everybody creates in order to sell something, or doesn't create just to, think in their minds, okay, how can I make a profit from this? Which is a lot more viable now with the Internet because of social media and online promotion. Artists have the ability now to really actually sell stuff, even introverted ones, because of places like Etsy or crowdfunding sites like Kickstarter, Indiegogo. So even the most introverted, has the ability to possibly get the work out there and sell things. Whereas, a couple decades ago, the introverted artists had a really rough time. They almost had to have an extroverted ally or friend that would be, a contact point for them, But I also see the Three of Wands as creativity for creativity's sake. Like, you're just making crafts at home, not because you want to sell them, but because you think they're beautiful or you want to give them as gifts, And so, you can't help but you feel that stirring within you to create something and make something. So it's not always necessarily about, making money or, a vocation or a job where, there's going to be some coin involved. It also can be, creativity for creativity's sake. So do you want to go on to the Three of Coins, speaking of coins? I see this card as like a card of the sum being greater than the parts. It's kind of like a measure twice and cut once type of card where you want to really get your stuff in order. I see this as a card of like checklists, of schematics, mapping. In our coffee tarot, we did something a little bit different. We showed 3 archaeologists that were excavating a grave in Yemen, where they believe that was one of the first places that people took coffee beans and roasted them and turned them into a drink. And so Ron set it in Yemen. Yeah, I had it set in Yemen, where he has these excavators, and there's like maps and papers and a knapsack beside them, and they have their tools and they're digging. And we took that to reflect, a blueprint and excavation, exploring history, going by protocols, discovery, journaling, digging for things, reading the manual, following directions, sometimes finding skeletons, literally and metaphorically. It could be construction or long-term projects, even subcontracting. I always see this too as a subcontracting card. Uncovering what matters, or an apprenticeship, manifestation, or even an unusual revelation. In our Snowland deck, we show these 3 cavemen, and one of the cavemen is consulting this elaborate actual blue blueprint, and it's hilarious because obviously that's anachronistic. And the other 2 are looking at him like, huh, with their clubs. One of them has this big snowball in his hand, like, what do you want me to do with this, boss? And so, it's kind of like, I see this sometimes as like a temp service, somebody who's not maybe established at their job, but maybe they work for a temp service, but also like building something together, or even raising the bar on a work, instead of just calling it in, they're really trying to raise the bar. Also, I see this as, well, it could be in medical, but it could also be financial or any other thing, is getting a second opinion. Because in the Rider-Waite-Smith, it looks like there's these, builder has a hammer in his hand, and he's near like the keystone area or the archway, and he's installing something. He's up on a footstool, and then there's, these two, presumably people who have hired them, or maybe one has hired him, and the other one's the supervisor on the job or the owner of the church or the building. And so, they're consulting a blueprint. They're going back to say, okay, now how we want to do this, step by step. They're consulting the schematics. Heating instructions, maybe he didn't follow the blueprint, and they're coming back saying, look, this is what we said, this is not what you're doing, So there's, a lot of back and forth in the Three of Coins where there's like a type of consulting, and discovery and uncovery to find out, okay, what is it that we're really doing here? And there's a sense of mapping and a needing to plan. And that goes back to the, measuring twice, cut once, because if you just rush into something and you're not following the directions, or you're not doing it right, it could cause delays in projects eventually. And this could easily turn into like a reverse Three of Coins where you have, because, if you don't get your foundation right, or if you don't get some of your key points right in a project, well, the rest of it can end up collapsing down the road. And like you were saying earlier, how we're still like in the early stages numerologically, if we were to look at it as a metaphor for progress. And so the 3 is still early stages. And so if you don't get this little milestone, set up right and short up right, then, a couple steps later when the 5 hits the fan, when you start getting some upheaval or some shaking or whatever, it may not stand the test of that shaking.
There you go. Yeah, I see it as the perfect example of collaboration, which I mentioned earlier, talking about artists and other things. It also takes 2 or more people to collaborate to make certain things. Especially the prime example that I gave there. The way I see it is you've got the cleric, presumably the client, they're working on a cathedral. In this case, there's a person holding plans in the Waite-Smith version. I see him as the architect, and then you have the artisan who's actually doing the work creating. So for me, the 3 of Pentacles can indicate skill and talents, job satisfaction, teamwork, taking pride in your work. The 3 of Pentacles can mean careers as an architect, designers, construction managers, anything in that area. In a love reading, depending on the surrounding cards, it could indicate love found at work, couples working together, work coming first in the relationship, things along those lines, And then when I team it up with other cards, I get things like with the Magician, a talented team, like a sales team. The Lover's card, finding love in the workplace, loving your job, it could mean as well. The Moon card, night work. Love that one. With the Knight of Cups or the Chariot, business travels. With the Queen of Cups, nursing, healthcare jobs. With the 6 of Swords, science jobs. With the Knight of Swords, dangerous work. So depending on how you interpret other cards, when you combine it with the 3 of Pentacles, there's a lot of ways you can look at it, and maybe you'll come up with some fascinating combinations there.
You said for nursing, 3 of Coins and Queen of Cups. What did you say right before that?
Oh, I was talking about the Knight of Cups and the Chariot.
Chariot, yeah.
Basically anything that has movement or, cars that are traditionally thought of as travel. You could even use the 6 of Swords for travel over water, and then combine that with the 3 of Pentacles. Business travel, business travel. Yeah,
I was thinking 3 of Coins plus 8 of Wands, airports, flying by the air, the 8 of wands, 3 of coins plus 8 of wands.
Mm-hmm.
The chariot too, if you do 3 of coins in a chariot, can be a car mechanic working on a car.
Yeah.
Chariot
there you go.
because chariot often means like a land vehicle, or travel by land, or technically train, because in Snowland our chariot is called the train. So I'd see anything that's land based, whether it's a car or a train. 3 of coins and chariot could be travel by train. That's cool. Yeah, and travel by water, I would see 6 of swords. Air, 8 of wands. Cool. Yeah, sometimes the tarot speaks that basically and that plainly. Like you were saying, 3 of coins plus moon, night work. Hello, that's really cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
Love
and
it.
the idea is to get people to start thinking and seeing beyond just the one individual card, but how does that work in combination?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can do a lot with one card, but I always tell people you have a tarot reading when you have more than one card. You got 2, 3, 4 cards at least before you start to really have a real tarot reading. From my point of view of what that is, you can read one card for sure, but that's just how I teach it. I think and it's more fun too. How many combinations can you come up with?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
another way you can challenge yourself is like not only taking 2 cards and reading them together, but also let's say that you draw the chariot. You can ask yourself, this is an exercise you can do, is call it like a lens exercise, where you draw a card and say, okay, I'm going to try to look at every card in the tarot through this lens, okay? So if you were to get the chariot, then what you would do is you would actually write down like all the card names, yes, all 78, just try it, and then go through it. Like, okay, now, so if I had the chariot, and the chariot is a vehicle of some sort, or transport, what would it mean with the Fool? Well, it could mean a hobo. Think about it. You know how hobos, get rides on trains, and they don't pay for it, and after all, the Fool cart, he has the little knapsack on his shoulder. What would it mean a magician, with a travel? Maybe it's a conductor. Because think about the magician, man. He has all that stuff on the table. And have you ever seen some of those, like, Amtrak hubs where, there's these people and they've got all these routes in front of them, these huge computer things, So maybe seeing the magician through a chariot lens would be somebody who is a conductor and who is, like a train conductor and who's managing all these routes and where to go. An empress. What would the empress in the chariot mean? Maybe a stroller. You got a mom, right? And you got a transport. Maybe it means a stroller, So if you start challenging yourself and see, just pick one card and say, okay, this is the lens I'm going to look through all 78 cards from. Boom. I mean, you're already, greatly expanding your catch of associations just by doing that with one card.
Absolutely, and you can niche it down even further. As I mentioned the even further. I mentioned the 3 of Pentacles and the Queen of Cups, nursing, healthcare, jobs. The Queen of Cups is that nurture, but even further down, my mind's blanking right now. What, Janet? What's the? What's the term for somebody that is helping with the birthing, but they're not necessarily a pediatric?
Midwife.
Yeah, midwife, so it could be perfect for like a midwife, I think, chunking down even further. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's another thing.
So we got
Very
3
cool.
of Pentacles, 3 of Wands, 3 of Pentacles.
Oh,
what do we want?
Now we get to one of the worst cards of the deck. I'm sorry, but it's very hard to put a positive spin on this.
Yes,
it's the 3 of Swords. It's the 3 of Swords. I consider this the shot through the heart. Shot through the heart.
There you go.
You give love a bad name. No, no, I'm laughing about it, but it's really not funny. This is a sucky card to get because it means, broken heart. It's sorrow. It's infidelity, cheating on someone, a turmoil, rupture, severance. grief, going away, a love triangle, mourning, a tearing.
Literally heartbreak.
A heartbreak, yeah, betrayal.
Yeah,
in our
breaking the heart
deck,
with the three swords.
Yeah, in our coffee deck, this was very almost prophetic in a way. Ron had this card as in an airport, and you could see a plane taking off and has like a little heart on the back of it. But it shows a woman who is carrying a baby, and she's walking through the airport, and a piece of paper has fallen, and there's a guy behind her who's trying to reach out to the little boy who's reaching towards him, and has a teddy bear that's all, tattered and torn, and it's sad. And with all this immigration stuff going on in the United States and the separation of families at the border and retaining them and everything, it just, when I looked at that card, I was like, oh my gosh, it's almost like it is. It's not quite like that because the woman's dressed in a business suit, and you can infer that perhaps this is a husband and wife, and she's leaving him, or it could just mean she's going away, and he, the child and the woman's going to maybe miss him. We don't know. And there's a sign in the back that says coffee shop, with the arrow going the other way, and so it's sad, and it could mean any kind of separation like that, where families are literally separated, or there's some kind of severance. Very sad. Exile, emigration and having to, go badly, a going away. It's just, it's such a sad card. And then, snowing.
But like you said in the beginning, I was just going to jump in and say, like you said in the beginning, Janet, this is the minors. This is real life. And so part of real life is anguish and heartbreak and things like this. It's real.
Right. Well, if you don't mind, it reminded me, can I read from my Naked Tarot?
Sure.
It's in the spirituality section. My Naked Tarot's got tons of stuff for every single card. And in the advice section, I cover career, romance, parenting, and spirituality. And, I always try to have, in anything I write, at least a spin of hope or something that can comfort a person, because even the most difficult cards, we can try to get some positive out of it, or at least some comfort or amelioration of the suffering. And so for the Three of Swords in the spirituality section of my upcoming Naked Tarot, I wrote, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." Spoken by Jesus from the Sermon on the Mount, this line from the Beatitudes, Latin beatitudo, meaning blessedness, seems a bit presumptive. You mean if I mourn, I'll get automatically comforted? Well, yes and no. It depends on your ego and your willingness to hang on to pain for some type of payoff. In this particular verse, the Greek word for blessed is makarios, from the root mak, indicating large or of long duration. The word is an adjective suggesting happy, supremely blessed, a condition in which congratulations are in order. Now you think, what? What do you mean congratulations, supremely blessed? But it's almost like, I see it as almost like a congratulations, you're part of the human race. You've experienced suffering, and that's part of what I believe incarnating on this earth is about. But then I put, then I write, there's something liberating, even refreshing, about allowing yourself to be cracked open by sorrow. And then I put, see the devil chapter. Not self-pity, that's 5 of Cups, but truly experiencing grief and rejection from your toes to your scalp. It breaks you, see the Tower, but also allows something beautiful to come forth. Such a process requires a sense of surrender, of entitled ego, of trying to protect yourself from the hurt, of attempting to avoid the dark truth of what happened. The mystery of this experience and the strength and resilience, yes, even deep joy it affords, can't be properly addressed here. From someone who's been broken many times and put together again, we can rebuild her, we have the technology, better, stronger, faster. Trust me, you can rise above the ashes, eventually finding love, beauty, and meaning. Hang in there, for your redemption draws nigh. So I try to put a positive spin on that from a spiritual standpoint. Many people have suffered, many spiritual people have suffered, Jesus obviously being crucified, and other religious people, Hypatia, she was more of an intellectual, but oh my God, everything she went through, being, dragged through the streets and cut by the masses, mostly all male, and a lot of her knowledge was lost, and so, it's a really tough card. In the Snowland deck, Ron portrayed this as a group of wolves on one side of a big snow, like a snow fort or something, and then there's this log crossing to the other side. And so there's a feeling from that card of more of rejection or exclusion, feeling alone or outcast, or a banishment, or even somebody being blackballed or shamed, humiliated, censored, kick out of a group, alienation, marginalized, or in religious terms, excommunicated, or left to fend for yourself. Sometimes it could be a scapegoat. I've even seen the Three of Swords come up for bullying, and that's usually more the Five of Swords, but sometimes the Three of Swords is the result of bullying, and how that feels, and abandonment. Because supposedly out in the wild, the chances of survival of a lone wolf is a lot less because wolves hunt in packs, and so there's a benefit of, let's say, a group kill and what have you. But, now in these modern days, metaphorically speaking, it's a lot better. We don't have to be in those lower chakras of depending on the tribe as much because we have the internet, we have subways, we have mass transit and things like that. And so it's not like caveman days where you really were dependent upon the tribe for your survival. Now if you get, excommunicated or blackballed or alienated, you can just say screw you and then you find another group. And it's easier because you don't have to sit there and look for another, nomadic group to try to, get into. You could join a Facebook group, and find like-minded others that way, or church groups or civic groups or what have you to be involved in to help, assuage those feelings of loneliness or isolation. And it's a very timely card because, I've read some studies lately that more than ever people feel lonely. And that's, that is sad, especially considering you wouldn't think that they would be for those reasons that I mentioned, mass transit and the ability, to meet people online, be a part of groups. But then sometimes you have
mass
those dynamics.
communication. Right,
you have those dynamics, though, of exclusion and bullying even there. And sometimes for sensitive people that, you're still in that position of feeling isolated or lonely. And it's a tough card. It really is. But one of the things that I said in our Snowland deck, and even in the Tarot in Reverse card book, which is the card about reversals, that if you can also look at the positive spin of the Three of Swords is like the Three Musketeers, where people get together through thick and thin, and it's kind of like an us against the world. Yeah, us against the world, and hey, my core group has stood with me, and that's okay. I got the people who love me that are surrounding me. So I tend to see that too. It could be the Three Musketeers through thick and thin. People who come to your aid to help shore you up during your difficult times. Because three, being that the companionship number too, and needing another for fulfillment.
Right. And, it's a tough card, but what I try to get people to focus on is the mental aspect because, hello, it's swords, mental consciousness,
True.
ideas, and so ultimately all of this is in your head. By the time the Three of Swords shows up in a reading, whatever caused it has happened, is in the past. What you're left with is the thoughts on it, okay? Or you're thinking of something that could potentially happen in the future that hasn't happened yet, right? So
now, see, I think, oh, wow, that's surprising because, see, I consider that the 8 and 9 of Swords. See, when the 8, the person who's got those, like, wrappings around them and the blindfold, but they can easily get out of it, I see the 8 of Swords as the point. 3 of Swords, I see is the actual grief. You're in the moment feeling like shit. And, yeah, of course, feelings are a result of the stories we tell ourselves, but I consider the 3 of Swords, man, the fresh wounds. Like, I wouldn't even consider starting to tell a person, hey, what's your thoughts, or do your cognitive behavioral therapy tools, that because it's so fresh. I mean, it's just like a fresh wound. But the 8 of Swords I tend to see is where, okay, yeah, the wound has happened, but now you're telling yourself stories and you're getting trapped by them, and because you keep playing these loops. And then the 9 of Swords I see is the Nightmare card is being all in your head where, you're imagining things that will never happen or very unlikely. It's catastrophic thinking. So that's interesting that you would ascribe that to the 3.
Yeah, well, it's always in combination. So you'd have the Three of Swords and maybe the Eight of Swords together, for example, But, a lot of times it's an emotional response to a mental thing going on. So, especially if it's a future thing, fear, false evidence appearing real, or how I like to say it, false expectations appearing real. And we create in our mind, future happenings that haven't and probably never will even occur. So, tips for the reader. So when the Three of Cups shows up, the Three of Swords, we haven't done the Cups yet, which actually is my favorite. With the Three of Swords showing up,
I can't stand the Three of Cups.
I'm the opposite. It's my favorite one. I love it in combination with other cards.
That's because you're a life path 2.
No, I'm a life path.
I'm a 7.
I'm a life path 6, and I love.
Is it a 6? Oh.
It's the nurturer. No, I think maybe I'm an engram 2, or my adjunct thing on the side
right.
is
You're
a 2.
You're an enneagram 2. Okay, there you go.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Life path 6. Okay.
But just to finish up on this, so you're a reader, you're new, and here comes up the Three of Swords. Okay, so what do you do? So what you do is you remind the seeker of their passions and their dreams. Get them motivated about life again. Steer them away from wanting to escape their problems. They need to focus, not on negative possible futures, but rather visualize how they want things to be, so that they can manifest them. So. What else would I say about that? So let's see here. Well, I'll just give
I think
some examples.
I would have an opposite approach from used to being, a Christian pastor. A lot of times it seems like, especially Americans in the modern times, they want to move on from grief so fast because we're uncomfortable when we see somebody suffering. We just want to either turn away from them or pretend like we didn't hear it or ignore them or, we just can't deal with it or we don't know what to say. And so if it were me and I saw the Three of Swords, I would actually, consider just acknowledging their feelings of betrayal and hurt because personally I feel like you can't move on to heal unless you actually feel, and I think sometimes too many people, especially in these modern times, where we're encouraged to stay happy, be positive, be optimistic, which naturally I am. But I think that sometimes if we gloss over the pain and the feeling,
absolutely,
before we get to the point of now you need to restructure your thoughts and see how you're doing it, then they might end up repressing and pushing down those feelings of pain, and then that can manifest, eventually into depression and. Or worse, just by push it down, and so I think I would have, a little bit of an opposite.
Yeah.
But that goes to show, there's different types of tarot readers and.
Yeah, and not only that, it depends on what the surrounding cards are. I keep coming back to that, so it depends on the situation. And for me, the anguish of the 3 card is further along in the process than it is for you. So for me, when the Three of Swords shows up, what's going on is they've gone through the different levels of denial, all these things, and now they're in this anguish state where they're stuck. They need to move forward. How do they do that? This is how you do it. Yeah. So basically,
I see that later.
I know, but see, I don't do it that way. I don't do it that we're here and then we're at a later place farther on in the cards. I just don't see it that way. I see it as this card means this card means that, regardless of the numerological sequence, and this is different from the manifestation sequence that I talked about earlier, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we get later on in the cards. But for me, I'm just focusing on the Three of Swords. What does that mean to me? This is what it means. And so now I want them to rather than an analyst who's going to spend, I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm, cure you in an hour, not spend the next 10 years going over your issues to finally come to some kind of solution or something like that. So rather than analyzing it and going over it and, you're already in the midst and you're past it at this point, you're actually at a point beyond all those the other steps of the process of grieving, and you're at a point where you're but you're stuck and you got to move forward. And that's how, that's why I remind them, that these are thoughts. Okay. And the way to solve the problem is not to analyze it for the next, 5 months or 5 years or 5 days even, but rather to focus on what you want to manifest now, and to return to your dreams and your hopes, and move forward and progress, past this point, So it all depends on the reading, the question from the querent, where are they, and what are they ultimately trying to accomplish, and then this card comes up, and what's the surrounding cards, and that's how you're going to handle it, depending, on all those different factors. Sometimes, like when the Three of Swords shows up with the Five of Swords, I think somebody's deliberately trying to hurt you. Don't let them. So it just depends on the surrounding, and what's the reading? Is it a love reading? Well, the Three of Swords, it can denote painful time, dealing with rejection, separation, but it can also mean the couple's just not communicating properly. Swords, communication. 3, communication. There's misunderstandings. They're shutting each other out. In a career reading, completely different. 3 of Swords can signify work that puts the seeker under stress. Could also denote a cardiologist, a surgeon. Grief, in the health, relating to health in some way, So to me, it's all about what's actually going on. You get the Three of Swords and the Six of Cups, a difficult childhood, or you get the Three of Swords and the Eight of Pentacles, tedious work. So what else is going on in the reading?
That's interesting, and it goes to show that how. I think we're displaying how different readers have actually different approaches, which can affect how the cards are interpreted and the kind of advice, that we give to our clients. Because, earlier you said you don't feel that it's really a reading until you start getting 2 or more cards. And with my clients, most of the time, what we'll do is they'll have this big issue and they'll just write it out via email, and I have them do that, and I'll break down that complex issue into actual separate questions.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah, because so often, I have that on my blog actually, how to do an email tarot reading. So if you Google that, you should should come up with that title. And I explain. So for me, I'm actually a really big proponent of the 1-card reading, if the question is specific enough. So I'm starting to see where you're coming from. That you're a type of person who would do 2, 3, 4 cards, for reading and read it like a story, which is what a lot of people do. But for me, I try to milk as much information from 1 card as I can, and so maybe that's why for me, I associate the Eight of Swords as being stuck in a mental loop of self-limitation, because I'm used to mostly interpreting 1 card for different issues, and I'm trying to suck all I can out of it, and I rarely do 2 cards for an issue, except of if I'm let's say a person is wanting to know what their greatest strengths at the time is, or some things that are holding them back, then obviously I'll probably draw 3 cards to say, okay, this, and this. But that goes to show too how your style of reading affects that. And so it's not, for the listener, it's not that we're contradicting each other. It's that our style of reading affects how we interpret it. And so for me, I jump to the 8 for that, only because I'm used to gleaning from 1 card. But Dax, since he is so used to reading 2, 3, 4 cards, he obviously has gotten used over the years of seeing pairs or triplets show up. And so in his mind, he knows what that means. So make sure you add that to your toolbox, and to ask yourself, am I more of a reader where I, asked 1 card, I consult 1 card, or do I consult 3 cards, and, then you can let your interpretation be informed, by your style.
Yeah, and it's a great teaching moment, because just because somebody reads a particular way doesn't mean that, that's the way it has to be done. And even with the individual interpretations of individual cards, just because it says something in a book doesn't mean you have to adopt that as your interpretation and your language. You know, when you're learning, what you're doing with tarot is you are creating a language database in your subconscious mind. So when these cards pop up, the various symbols are going to, you know, depending on what you focus on, is going to pop up different thoughts and ideas, you know, and then in combination with other cards, if you work that way. When I'm on the radio, you know, it could be a very simple question, and I'm still pulling 5 cards, and then I might pull another 5 cards, and I might not use all of the cards when I'm actually talking to the caller on the reading, you know, but I pull them in 5s because I'm using my 5-card yes/no spread in conjunction with getting a lot of information from a lot of cards. Sometimes I have, you know, 5, 10, 15 cards on the screen, you know, and I'm gleaning different things, and I'm not even mentioning on air that, you know, I'm dealing with all these different cards. Sometimes I only pull 1 or 2 or 3 cards, you know, or I'll pull 1 card and then 2 cards as kind of qualifiers that I put on the left and the right, you know, kind of a little below as I'm laying them out, and I'm looking at it that way. But I always start on radio. I always pull the 5 cards first, and then if I, you know, other questions or other angles come up, I'll pull a single card, and I may or may not, you know, pull a couple of other cards to go along with it.
That's so neat, because every time I do readings on air, it's only 1 card.
Yeah, I know. Well, I've noticed that.
That is so cool.
I've noticed that. And it's great because you can do all that with just 1 card, you know, and it's just completely different ways of doing it. Nothing's right or wrong. It's what fits you and your style, you know. And if you're new, you're developing your style, you know. And you know, you might do one thing one day and then and I'm a Gemini, so like, you know, one day I'm out with friends, they have a problem, I pull a card out, 1 card. You know, other days I'm with a client, I'm pulling 5 cards. You know, it changes for me because I'm a Gemini and I like to, you know, do different things. I find different situations require a different way of looking at it. Also to shorten things. You know, I'm really good at pulling a gazillion cards, but not doing a 2-hour reading with 1 caller. Some other radio hosts are not good at that, and so especially if they're new hosts, I tell them, just pull 1 card. Just give them a quick flash of insight from that 1 card and then move to the next caller. That's how you keep your calls under 2 minutes each, you know. Yeah, so it depends on who's doing it too, you know. It's like I've trained myself to look at a bunch of things and whittle it down to a piece of information that I can give out in a few sentences and then move to the next caller. Other readers, especially if they're new or they're new radio hosts, you know, they're great readers. They've been reading for 30 years, but now they're on radio and they don't know how to translate that, you know. So what they end up doing is they pull a bunch of cards and they're spending 15 minutes on 1 caller because they're going through the entire reading. They pulled an entire Celtic cross or something, you know, and they're going through the whole thing. And it's like, no, these are called mini readings. You're supposed to just give them a little bit of insight, and if they want a longer reading, they can book a private session with you for a longer reading, you know. So just pull 1 card, 2 at the most, you know. So it all depends.
Well, another element we haven't really addressed is the fact too that you have to have trust. You have to have trust that the reader you are drawn to is right for you. And that's why I feel it's really important when a person goes to get a reading that they should, ideally, you know, the person has their style on their bio, like the type of reader, like for you know, people would know right away that you are more of a hypnotherapist, NLP type person where you're getting them on their feet quick. Me, I'm more of a psychological, mystical, symbolic reader. So my approach is different, but also, you know, our ethics, you know, which I'm sure they're probably similar in that aspect. But people have to trust, you know, that they're being led to the reader that they're supposed to be going to, so don't get scared out there if you're like, well, which reader should I pick then? Well, you just have to trust your gut. After investigating and sussing them out and checking out their bio and their experience, trust your gut that the type of one that you've picked was best for you. Oh, we haven't done the cups. We'll have to do the cups real quick.
Well, it's funny because that's the next sentence I was going to say is like, okay, Janet, I got one question for you, and that is, why is the cups your most unfavorite of the threes? It's my favorite, so explain that one.
Oh, no. Do I? You know why? Because I tend to see this as just gossipy girls in cliques.
Oh, I
can
see that.
I can't stand cliques. I really don't like most groups of women because they're mostly just airheaded, stupid, shallow. I mean, I'll just be honest.
This just shows you how people, when they interpret cards, they bring their own baggage along with them. Let me just say.
Thanks. Kiss my ass back. No. That's true. It's true. You bring your own experience and your own, I try not to let that bleed out into my readings for people. This is just my personal aversion that hopefully doesn't bleed into how I read for people. But, that's why I don't like it. I just see it as superficial, like how people get on Instagram or Facebook and they'll have like their readings with all their flowers and their crystals and their cards laid out and everything looks perfect like a photo shoot. And I see that as like it's Three of Cups. I see that as like slick photoshopping, making things appear prettier than they need to be. You know what I'm saying? That's not real.
But it's funny because when you said that, it just popped in my head that sometimes when I get the Three of Cups along with the Eight of Wands, because I always associate it, Eight of Wands. I can associate it with a lot of different things and things moving quickly. But I always think of fast communication when I get a 3 card with the wands, and when I get the Three of Cups and the Eight of Wands, I do often think that. I often think of gossip, on Facebook or via the internet. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and clicks, which can result in Three of Swords, because you have people who deliberately will exclude, and, it's like Mean Girls. It's like the dark side of Three of Cups is Mean Girls, basically. And that's why I don't like it. I'd much rather be with a bunch of guys than a bunch of girls. That's just me. But the Three of Cups can also mean like a boys' night out, going to drinking at bars, social events,
or girls' night out,
or tailgating. You know how like guys will go into the parking lot of a sports arena, let's say football, and they tailgate, bring out their grills and the beer and everything like that. So, but for like our coffee tarot, we had it more as a family type card. We showed the 3 little bears. I'm not the 3 little bears, the 3 bears. Papa Bear, Mama Bear, Baby Bear. They're at this diner, and it's called Goldie's Diner, which is hilarious because it's supposed to be Goldilocks. And, they're enjoying the little iced coffee there. And so for the Three of Cups, for the Three of Cups with the coffee tarot, we made it more of a spin of everything being just right. Remember, with the Goldilocks when she got into the baby's porridge and his bed and chair, everything was just right. So for the coffee tarot, we took the Three of Cups as a spin of everything being just right, of reciprocation, taking the day off, splurging on something, going out to dinner or a family outing, parents and children, spending happy times together. For Snowland, we have the macaque, the Japanese snow monkeys, and they're like on these hot springs with these cocktails, and this little penguin's bringing them drinks. And so it's more of an energy of, hanging out. And, of course, there could be gossiping and things like that. But also this comes up, too, with just friends. So if you're going to have a romance reading and the Three of Cups comes up, that's like a just friends card, whereas the Two of Cups would be actual intimacy, in romance. But when Three of Cups, well, that person just sees you as a friend. And so, yeah. Three of Cups.
Yeah, and
what do you think?
For those that are following along and they're looking at the Radiant Wade Smith image on the Psychic Talk Radio Facebook group there, I'll just tell you what I tell my students, which is, okay, so Three of Cups. Obviously here you got 3 individuals celebrating, And the laurel wreaths on the women's heads, they symbolize like victory, status, recognition, glory. The woman with her back to us is clad in red, which is the color of passion for life. Another's clad in yellow, the color of optimism, health, vitality.
It could be red too. It could be red because she just stabbed somebody in the back and she's covered with her blood.
Too. Oh yeah, here comes Janet's point of view, and then the third one is in.
And the yellow is because she pissed herself.
She did, yeah. And then the third one is clad in white, and that's the color of spirit, purity, innocence. So the card can mean, a party, enjoyment, celebration, dancing, celebrating an accomplishment, being with friends. But like you said, girls' night out, boys' night out, having an entourage. I often see it as having an entourage, being popular girls, valley girls, girls' night out.
Oh my God!
And then, combinations with other things. If you have the Three of Cups and the Two of Cups, well, obviously a wedding or engagement party, because for me, the Queen of Pentacles, literally looks like my mom. And then the way she's holding the card, the pentacle, the coins in the card, in the Wade Smith version, it's a very nurturing card. So when I see that with the Three of Cups, I think of, wedding shower, baby shower, something like that. You know?
Yeah.
And then with a Pentacles card, like, okay, Ace of Pentacles, Three of Cups, business partners, that kind of thing. With the Fool card, it could be celebrating a new beginning or a university party, or even with the Eight of Cups and the Three of Cups, the university party, or the Devil card, overindulgence, things like that.
Alcoholism, especially if you get the Devil coming up with that.
And we just talked about three.
Three of Cups could be social drinking, but then you have that with the Devil. You get the Devil come up. It's somebody who went from a social drinker to an alcoholic.
Or if you took the Eight of Cups and the Devil card, it could mean that too. The alcoholism. So there's a lot of ways you can play with this. Also, the Three of Cups and we just talked about the Three of Pentacles. So you got the Three of Cups and the Three of Pentacles. A work party.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Four of Wands, it could be like a block party. Four of Wands could be like a block party, or like a street fair. Something, a community celebration.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. It goes on and on. Yeah. Well, actually, it's funny because in my Naked Tarot, for the Four of Wands, I put had community gatherings and bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, baby showers, and all that. I have it all, under the Four of Wands. But yeah, you put the Three of Cups there, and you're really honing in and getting confirmation for that.
Yeah, like if the Hierophant card, which often talks about ritual, shows up with the Three of Cups and the Four of Wands, ritual, celebration, and the Four of Wands, for me, that would narrow it down a lot. I would go with bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah for that, or something like that, But so there you go, the Three of Cups. Janet doesn't like it. I love it.
The icy silence. Oh, God, this has been a fun show.
Yes. And so next time, and it's going to be 2 weeks, because we're on our summer relaxed schedule. So for this month and next month, we're doing Tarot Insider shows every other Wednesday. So in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about the 4 cards. 4 is structure in numerology, and there's a lot of structure going on. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Fours are interesting because that's when you're heading into a plateau. And like you were saying earlier, that's when you can start getting too comfortable, and then we'll examine what can happen with that when you just play it safe.
Absolutely.